getting harder to find work in the United States. In August, businesses added just 22,000 new jobs.
That's actually quite a weak number. Looking at that in isolation, that would actually be a lot more consistent with the start of a recession.
By 2050, fast food jobs could disappear from America. You heard that right? Right now, all across America, fast food restaurants are not making big headlines with massive rounds of layoffs. They're simply not hiring people the way that they used to. Job postings disappear without explanation. Work schedules get tighter, shifts get shorter, and when an employee quits, many of those positions are never filled again. Our fast food company is looking at rising wages and coming to the conclusion that people are the problem. In this video, I'm going to show you why these chains are quietly changing the way they operate, how technology is taking away jobs piece by piece, and more importantly, what happens to the Americans who once relied on fast food for their first job a night shift or a chance to start over. Watch until the end, because this isn't just about fast food, and this could be the future of work in America. I know this might sound a little confusing because on the news and the press and in financial reports, we still hear corporations talking about revenue growth, profits, and expansion plans. From the outside, you might think the fast food industry is still operating like normal, but if you're standing behind the counter, the picture can look completely different. A job doesn't have to disappear with a termination letter. It can disappear in a much less dramatic way than this week. You get fewer shifts, a coworker quits, and nobody gets hired to replace them. The person who used to work only at the counter now has to run over and pack food, take drive-through orders, prepare drinks, and clean the restaurant. And of course, we have a very polite name for that being short-staffed. It sounds like some temporary accident. A rough week. A few people called out. Next month, everything will be back to normal. But if being short-staffed goes on year after year, if businesses discover that their restaurants can still stay open with fewer people, if the employees who are left reluctantly keep taking on more work, then I'm not sure we should still call it being short-staffed. Maybe that's just the new model. Take a look at Nikia Hamilton. She's 25 years old, a mother of 3, and in this video she's basically running an entire Burger King by herself. Making fries, making burgers, preparing chicken sandwiches, taking care of customers up front, while working the drive-through window, washing dishes, cleaning up. A coworker quit and there was nobody to replace them. Nikia later said there were shifts when she had to work more than 12 hours. Burger King said its policy requires more than one employee on every shift. Great. On paper, everything still looks fine. But Nikia's rent doesn't get paid with policies written on paper. And what I care about is what happens to the people who are left when a restaurant loses workers but keeps operating anyway. Customers look at it and see slow service. They see wrong orders, they see a dirty restaurant, they see an exhausted employee and decide that service is terrible these days. But if 5 people used to work a shift, and today there are only 2 or 3, the work didn't disappear. It got dumped on the people who haven't quit. That's the point we need to understand. Because being short-staffed sounds like a problem the business is trying to solve. But sometimes operating with fewer people actually helps a business cut costs. And if the system keeps running even with exhausted employees and customers waiting longer, how much incentive is there to go back to having a bigger staff like before? Young people are the group I'm especially worried about here. Fast food used to be one of the easiest doors into the job market. No college degree, no years of experience. You just had to be ready to show up and work. But if restaurants get more and more comfortable operating with a smaller staff, then we're not just talking about the people who are doing too much work. We're also talking about the people who will never get hired for those jobs in the first place. And here's what's interesting. While businesses are learning how to get by with fewer people, technology is also making it easier for workers themselves to say, I don't need this job anymore. That's when the whole story starts to change. When automation replaces a task in a restaurant, it doesn't show up as a layoff. A self-service ordering kiosk doesn't go file for unemployment. An automated drink machine doesn't complain that its hours got cut. From a statistical point of view, that job simply fades away and disappears. That's why fast food jobs can become invisible. They don't disappear with alarms going off or huge headlines. They disappear through hiring freezes, reduced schedules, and positions that quietly stop existing. By the time the impact becomes obvious enough when fewer and fewer people can get hired into the industry, the change has already been locked into the operating model. What looks like stability on the surface may actually be a system that has learned how to operate with fewer workers than ever before. If you want to understand why fast food jobs are shrinking, you can't look at just one cause. This isn't the story of one policy or one isolated decision. It's the story of a cost structure that changed faster than the industry could comfortably absorb. Fast food was built on the thin profit margins. That model worked when costs were predictable and customer volume was high enough. But over the past few years, almost every major category of expenses has moved in the wrong direction at the same time. Rent and commercial leases have been adjusted upward in many markets. Insurance costs have risen sharply, especially in states with higher risks and tighter regulations. Electricity, water, and energy costs are still volatile. Food ingredient prices fluctuate more than they used to. And labor costs, while only one part of the equation, have also become significantly more expensive. The problem isn't that one expense went up. The problem is that everything went up together. When pressure hits from every direction at the same time, businesses are forced to make structural choices. In fast food, they only have a few levers they can pull. Raising prices is one option, but there are limits to how far they can go. Fast food depends on customers who are extremely sensitive to price. If menu prices get pushed too high, people don't necessarily stop eating fast food altogether. They just go less often. Customer traffic quietly falls, and that puts even more pressure on profit margins. Cutting labor is another lever, and it's the lever that can be pulled the fastest. Work hours can be reduced immediately. Shifts can be combined. Restaurants can schedule fewer people and still stay open. And this is exactly where fast food jobs start shrinking faster. Not through dramatic rounds of layoffs, but through ordinary decisions made every single day in one restaurant at a time. The third lever is technology. And unlike raising prices or cutting labor hours, the technology usually doesn't get reversed. Once a system is put in place and allows a restaurant to operate with fewer employees, it becomes the new structure. What makes this moment different from the earlier periods of rising costs is that automation is no longer experimental. It's reliable enough, easy enough to scale, and getting cheaper. Restaurants no longer have to guess whether it works. They already know it works. When cost pressure sticks around, businesses don't sit there waiting for things to go back to the way they were. They adapt for the long term. And the math usually points in one direction: fewer employees, each person doing more work, supported by machines that never call in sick and never ask for more hours. This isn't a judgment, it's reality. And it's reshaping the fast food industry faster than most people realize. For a long time, automation in fast food was treated like a backup plan, something companies quietly tested while still depending on large staffs. Self-service ordering kiosks were just another option. Automated drink machines were just an extra convenience. Robots in the kitchen looked more like a media stunt than a real change in how restaurants operated. That phase is over. Today, restaurant automation has crossed the line from experiment to default. The story is no longer about testing what technology can do. The story is that businesses are locking in what technology has already proven it can do reliably, then building their entire operating model around it. The most important change isn't that machines are replacing workers one for one. What's more significant is that entire positions are being designed out of the system. Ordering, payment, drink preparation, and some basic food prep tasks are increasingly being handled through automated processes. Human workers are increasingly being kept around for exceptions, stepping in only when a machine breaks down, gets stuck, or something doesn't go according to plan. This fundamentally changes how many people a restaurant needs just to keep operating. There's something we don't talk about nearly enough when it comes to the American job market today. Not everyone who loses an opportunity ever had a job to get laid off from. Some people haven't even had a chance to enter the job market before the door starts closing in front of them. For decades, fast food was one of the simplest places to start. You're 17 with no experience. Go to McDonald's. You're in college and need a night shift. Try Wendy's. You took a few years off to raise your kids and need to start earning money again. A restaurant or fast food place could at least give you a chance. You didn't need a polished resume. You didn't need an advanced degree. You didn't need experience before you were allowed to get experience. Makes sense, right? But now look at this. Lohani Santos, 26, has 2 college degrees, speaks 3 languages, and carried a whole stack of resumes around the city asking for work in person at stores and coffee shops. She wasn't just looking for a job in her field. She was willing to take minimum wage jobs too. And she still struggled to find work. This is where I want to ask a very simple question. We keep telling young people, don't be picky. Start at the bottom. Okay, but where is the bottom if even the lowest rung is starting to make you fight just to get your foot in the door? This is the part I find really worrying. Automation doesn't have to fire an 18-year-old girl. It just has to make sure that cashier position is never created. A store doesn't need to send a rejection letter to a mother trying to return to work after spending a few years raising her kids. They just need to operate with fewer people and stop posting that job. No press conference. No headline saying 10,000 jobs just disappeared. No footage of employees walking out of an office carrying cardboard boxes. There's just no job posting. And then we're surprised when young people say they've submitted dozens, even hundreds of applications and still can't find work. The most dangerous part of a lean staffing model isn't just that the people already working have to move faster. It's that the people outside the door have to compete for fewer positions. Students, caregivers, older people who need a backup job, people recovering from illness, people with no experience, people who once relied on fast food as a temporary lifeline. And we're assuming that if these jobs disappear, they will automatically move on to something better. No. A self-service kiosk doesn't turn a 17-year-old student into a software technician. An automated system doesn't hand a single mother a new degree. People still have to pay rent, still have to buy groceries, and still need somewhere willing to tell them, okay, you can start here. That's what I think we're really losing. Not just a few low-wage jobs, but one of the lowest rungs that used to help Americans step into the economy. And once that rung gets taken away, the question is no longer who's going to fry the fries. The question is, where are the people who used to start? They're supposed to start now. There's a reason more and more Americans aren't just complaining that fast food costs more. They're starting to feel betrayed. Because the ads still look great. Thick burgers, fresh green lettuce cheese melting in just the right place, and crispy golden fries, everything looking like it was made just for you. Then you open the bag. The burger is smashed flat. The lettuce is wilted. The fries are cold. The portion is so small you have to check the receipt again to make sure you didn't accidentally order a kid's meal. And of course the price didn't get any smaller along with it. In this video, Wendy's customer shows the food she just received fries stuck together in clumps, a lot of grease, and a burger that doesn't meet the quality she expected. What stands out is that she says this wasn't the first time. This is exactly where trust starts to break. Because customers can accept cheap food that isn't perfect. But when prices start getting close to what you pay for a meal at a regular restaurant, expectations change too. This guy holds the sandwich in his hand and asks a very simple question. Why does it feel smaller when the price is getting bigger? McDonald's denies changing the size of its products, so I'm not saying they secretly made the sandwich smaller. But really the bigger problem is somewhere else. Customers have started to become suspicious. Once people have to look at their burger and wonder, did they just take something away from me? The brand has a problem no matter what the product specifications say. And then we get to this case. Here the customer isn't just saying, I feel like the portion is smaller. He sits down and counts. The promotion was advertised as about 50 pieces of popcorn chicken. He says he got 35. This is where the story stops at being just about taste. It becomes a question of what was promised and what the customer actually received. And behind all of this, there's something else most people don't see. The employees are under pressure too. Fewer people on each shift. Drive-through service times measured in seconds. One person has to handle customers at the counter app orders of packaging checking drinks and trying not to slow down the entire line. You can optimize a restaurant for speed, scalability, consistency, and profit margins. But don't be surprised when quality is one of the things that slowly gets lost along the way. But if fast food isn't cheap anymore, doesn't taste good anymore, and isn't even enjoyable anymore, then why should I come back? I'm sure you've noticed this too. Back in the day when you walked into a fast food restaurant, the first person you usually saw was a cashier. Now in more and more places, the first thing greeting you is a screen. You choose your own food, add your own sauce, remove your own onions, pay by yourself, and then the order automatically gets sent to the kitchen. Very convenient. And it's kind of interesting that customers are still paying the same way, except now they're doing part of the work that employees used to do. I'm not saying one self-service kiosk automatically means one person loses a job. That's way too simple. What's more important is that technology doesn't have to replace an entire person. It just has to gradually take pieces of their job. An employee used to take the order, enter the items, collect the money, and print the receipt. If software takes away 3 of those 4 tasks, the company doesn't need to fire anybody that same day. But add that up across an entire shift, then an entire week, then thousands of stores. Eventually, the question is no longer can the machine replace the employee? The question becomes how many employees does the store still need? And of course, technology doesn't always work perfectly. Machines get orders wrong, customers don't know where to change an item, a system breaks down, and eventually a real employee still has to come over and fix it. So we end up with a pretty interesting contradiction. Technology is brought in to reduce the work people have to do, but sometimes customers end up doing more, and the employees who are left have to run around even more. But from the company's point of view, the math is still extremely attractive. Wages go up, rent goes up, insurance goes up, ingredient costs go up, and customers get angry if prices go up again. You can't keep raising prices forever. You can't keep lowering quality forever either. So what's left to optimize labor, and this is where the phrase short-staffed starts to sound kind of funny. If a store used to need 10 people and can now keep running with 7, I'm not sure the finance department is going to ask, When are we hiring those 3 people back? They might ask, why did we ever need 10 people in the first place? That's how jobs disappear. You don't need one huge round of layoffs. Someone quits and doesn't get replaced. An empty cashier station gets replaced by a screen. A task gets automated. A shift gets scheduled with fewer people. There's no single day we can point to and say, that job died today. It simply never comes back. And machines don't have to replace every fast food worker to create a massive change. They just have to help a store that once needed 10 people operate with 8, then 7, then 6. Multiply that by thousands of locations, and we're no longer talking about one ordering machine. We're talking about a completely different labor model. And once companies prove they can keep the doors open with fewer people, the next question won't be whether the technology works. It'll be how far can they cut. I think this is where we need to zoom out a little. Because if we only look at this as a McDonald's, Burger King, or a California problem, we're going to miss the most important part. California may be where the pressure showed up earlier. Higher costs, higher wages, businesses forced to adapt faster. But what's spreading isn't one specific law. What's spreading is a new way of operating. And this is what I want you to remember: policies have state borders, business models don't. Once a major chain discovers that it can run a restaurant with fewer employees, use more self-service kiosks, tighten schedules even further, and still keep service speed at an acceptable level, they're not going to leave that formula sitting in one location. An employee can't work at 3,000 stores at the same time. Software can. A self-service ordering kiosk that works in Los Angeles can also be rolled out in Phoenix, Nevada, Texas, and then thousands of other places. And what speeds this up isn't just cheaper technology, it's competition. If one chain proves that 7 people can do the amount of work that used to require 10 competitors are going to notice immediately. At that point, the question is no longer whether they like that model. The question is whether they can afford not to follow it. That's how competitive advantage gradually turns into a required standard. And I think fast food is just where we can see this most clearly. Because the work involves so many repetitive tasks, standardized processes, high speed, and constant employee turnover. That makes it a perfect laboratory for the fewer people, more systems model. But this logic doesn't stop with burgers and fries. Retail warehouses, customer service delivery, support centers, and even some entry-level office jobs are moving in a similar direction. Repetitive tasks are separated out, automated, consolidated, and then the remaining work is handed to fewer people. I'm not saying every low-skill job is going to disappear. That's too simple. What's more concerning is that there may be fewer of them, they may become harder to get into, and they may demand more from workers. The bottom layer of the job market is still there, but the doorway into it is getting narrower. And the people who do stay are also having to become a different kind of worker. Instead of doing just one repetitive task over and over, they have to know how to handle systems, fix problems, manage multiple order channels, monitor machines, and keep the whole process from getting backed up. In other words, jobs aren't just being taken away. They're being redesigned. And here's the part. I think a lot of people won't like hearing this transition. It's going to create winners and losers. People with technology skills, management skills, and the ability to adapt may move up. But people with fewer skills, less money to retrain, less time, and almost no financial cushion are going to feel the most pressure. Fast food isn't going to disappear. Burgers will still be sold, the lights will still be on, customers will still line up. But if fewer and fewer people are needed to keep all of that running, then what we're looking at isn't just the future of fast food. It may be a preview of the American job market. And maybe this is the part that's most worth thinking about. Fast food jobs aren't going to disappear tomorrow morning. There won't be one day when we wake up and suddenly see millions of positions gone. It happens much more slowly. One shift gets cut, one person quits and doesn't get replaced. One cashier station turns into a screen, and then a store that once needed 10 people realizes that 6 or 7 are enough to keep the doors open. What worries me isn't that we're going to run out of burgers or fries. They'll still be there. The real question is who will still get to stand behind the counter and make a living from them. Because if one of the easiest doors into the American job market is slowly getting narrower, this story is much bigger than fast food. It's about opportunity changing right in front of us. If you want to keep looking at America through what people are actually experiencing, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.